Good Monday evening to you. I'm Dan Murrell here with Lon Harris. Charting with Dan is today, Lon. It's all Joker. It's all Joker today.
It's a very and a few cats at the end.
We have Joker. You're right. It's not all Joker. It's mostly Joker, and then we have some Cats tea that I uncovered, which is great. And then, you know what, we're also going to talk about some Spanish foreign language films.
Yeah, we'll mix it up.
It's not all Joker, but it's mostly Joker. So let's get right to the Joker of it all, which is, of course, if we look at the top 5 for this weekend, as expected, Joker, the #1 movie, with coming in even above the higher end of what was expected. Yeah. $96 million. It really did gain momentum. It had a big opening night. It had a good Saturday, had a good Sunday. Not a bad number. If you're Warner Brothers, as a $55 million budgeted film, obviously a great start for that movie.
Yeah, we discussed last week on the show that this was kind of, it's like an unknown. It was hard to sort of say where the chips were going to fall. Obviously, everything went well. Everything went on the plus side for them. I think the hype, what we were talking about last week too, like the fact that it generated so much controversy and discussion in the press, I think clearly helped the movie and got the word out and got people hyped to see what it was all about.
It got the curiosity factor going. And then I was reading about, we talk about cinema score on the show, and what I love about it is it gives you a gauge of audience expectation. And I saw some stories saying like, well, it got a B+ cinema score. That's the same thing that Justice League got, blah, 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 blah. But here's why I think it's a little bit different in this case, is that I think when you have a movie like Joker, which plays in a genre, which plays, which some people would be going into perhaps expecting something different than they got, which I think is the story, and you see anecdotally on social media, a lot of people love the film. Some people weren't quite prepared for what the movie was exactly.
Right.
I think for a movie like Joker to get a cinema score of B+ is not the same as Justice League, which everybody pretty much knows what they're gonna get, or at least what they're expecting to get when you go in.
Right.
The first two both It films, both got a B+ cinema score, and I think it's sort of the same thing. It played in the horror area. A lot of the hardcore horror fans probably showed up and went, this is not what I really, but it won over a lot of other people. So when you look at the cinema score, I think I actually thought that it might be a little bit lower only because it is so different than what I think some people would expect. And that's what cinema score is a measure of, largely expectations. So I think this is where when you talk about cinema score, it is one metric, but even that metric, I think you have to analyze on a case-by-case situation.
Yeah, I mean, a B+ cinema score for a movie that it's a tent pole, it's just trying to get an audience excited for what it is and then come out. It's a little disappointing to get a B+. But for a movie that's taking as huge a shot and as daring as this one, that's because I mean I read the script for Joker a while ago, and when you read it on the page, you're like, well, this does not feel like a Joker movie at all. Like when you tell people we're making a new movie about the Joker, Batman's nemesis in Gotham City based on comic books, you picture a certain movie in your head, and that is not what this movie is. Yeah. So I think that coming at it, going for something that's so outside the box and still getting a B+ is actually pretty good.
Yeah. Like I said, it's everything. I think you need to add context. It's very few numbers or scores or anything that you can just look at without digging into.
And everybody always wants it to be an exact comparison. Yeah.
That's why we love you for watching this show, because that's what we try to do on the show. So on Joker set a slew of records. That's a tongue twister. Joker set a slew of records. Let's start going through them a little bit piece by piece. First of all, we have a new highest opening film in the month of October. That record was set last year, or broken last year, with Venom. Now Joker comes in and replaces one villain solo movie with another villain solo movie, because Joker is now the highest opening. I know, right? The highest opening October weekend of all time. And actually, if you look at that top 5, it is a very eclectic mixture of films. You have Joker, you have Venom, last year's Halloween, number 3 on that list. Then you've got, it's basically villains and space.
Right.
Is what works in October, because then you have Gravity and you have The Martian with Matt Damon.
The top 4 out of the 5 there are also one-word titles.
Joker,
Venom, Gravity, Halloween, and then The Martian.
The Martian, as I like to call it. We'll actually have more to say about both of those last 2 films in a little bit, because we introduced a new feature last week that I heard your feedback. We revised it, but
it's very strong feedback.
We're gonna. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's look at. For the fall season, the Joker is also a top 5 of all time. When you look at the Bits Index, butts in the seats, For the fall season, it remains #1 as far as tickets sold, but Joker coming in there at #2, It Chapter 2 there at #3, then Venom, then Halloween. Killer Clowns, really, and Warner Brothers. If you're Warner Brothers, you're going to make a psycho clown movie every year for the next however many years, because they've had 2 this year.
Clowns dominating those charts. People go clown crazy in
Now,
October.
what I think is interesting about that one in particular is, remember, that is tickets sold.
Right.
So we talk about attendance. We talk about the fact that theater attendance is down, which is true. But at the same time, all of those films have come out in the last 3 years. And so I think that's a great example when you look at how the industry is changing. That's a great example of what I think is going on largely is you're out of the summer, but you have Hollywood is expanding their release schedule.
Yes.
They are investing in a lot of genre films, pushing horror films a little bit higher, pushing comic book films a lot more obviously. Even films like Venom, they're making those kinds of films. And then leveraging IP, Halloween, obviously. Venom was a leverage of the Spider-Man IP. Joker, definitely a leveraging of the Batman IP. And there's been many discussions about that. But I think when you look at the fact that even though when you look at the actual turnstile numbers, yes, overall, they may not be what they used to be, October or the fall season is a good example of what studios have been doing lately, which is we're going to leverage these big properties outside of what used to be the traditional summer window, and you're seeing that with the number of tickets being sold to a lot of these films.
Yeah, I mean, I think you sort of touched on this, and I think in addition to everything you said, which is definitely true, I think you're also looking at a lot of the times we pull up these random weekends and we're like, oh, look at all these new records. It's because up until a few years ago, studios didn't really release huge movies in the middle or the end of September.
No.
Getting ready for October. Like October, you'd start to get award season releases at the end of the month.
Yeah, September was like wasteland.
Right.
Summer's over. We're going to dump everything that we didn't want to make money.
Even October used to be like, I remember when I was reviewing movies and stuff, it would be like Three Kings and The Insider would come out in October. It's like, we want to get buzz for these performances. We want to introduce this into the award conversation, but not huge tentpole movies. I mean, now we just get these juggernauts released. The end of September, there is no more like summer in the strictest sense. So yeah, you're seeing movies set records in February, in April, in October, and
you got to go. They run out of real estate. There's so many properties and IPs and sequels. You run out of summer weekends and holiday weekends.
We talked about this a lot at the beginning of the year, but like January and February used to be wastelands, and now they're packed because it's just where all the extra stuff, the runoff goes.
It's got to go somewhere. Joaquin Phoenix had a career opening as far as box office money and also as far as tickets. We'll get to that later. By far, dollar-wise, the highest opening of his career, topping Signs, which is number 2 at $60 million. The Village at 50, then Gladiator and Walk the Line there. I think we knew this coming in. We discussed this. We were discussing this earlier. I think, and I've said it on a lot of other shows, I think Joaquin Phoenix is one of, if not the best actor working today. And one thing that I do hope comes out of this is if his interest is spur, I don't want to see him put into a universe, a blank universe as blank, comic book or whatever monster character. But I hope that, this film, we'll see how he does awards season wise. Obviously the Oscars, at least a nomination, is a very good possibility. I do hope that the success of this film gives him the clout when he's attracted to one of the projects that maybe otherwise a studio would not have invested in as heavily or would not have promoted as heavily because he's not what would be considered a bankable name. I hope that this does give him that kind of clout so that he always chooses what I think are interesting movies. They're not all great, but particularly lately, he chooses what I think are interesting roles, interesting films. And I do hope that maybe, in a weird way, he's dragging the attention just through sheer force of will and bankability to some of these other projects.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a guy who's not going to take the boost he gets from this and just try to jump into, like, I'm going to do the Hot Wheels movie and then I'll play Stretch Armstrong. Like, he's going to use some of this juice to get more interesting kinds of films. Maybe we were talking about You Were Never Really Here, stuff like Her.
Or even if you look at a movie called, there was one that came out last year called Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot, which I felt story-wise was fairly standard, but he elevated that movie through his performance. I hope that he's able to take that and really bring more to these kinds of projects because I would love to see a lot of, You Were Never Really Here was one of my favorite movies that came out that year. it was very small and it didn't have a lot of eyeballs on it just because studios are only going to market it so much.
It's a difficult movie, but an interesting companion piece to Joker.
It is actually a very interesting
those two movies can be watched together.
Two sides of the same coin.
Very much
if
so.
Joker had gone this way versus...
And yet stylistically different ways of approaching very similar kinds of material.
A career weekend for director Todd Phillips as well. He's no stranger to blockbusters, but Joker was the highest opening of his career. Number one, $96 million, topping out over his number 2 film, The Hangover Part 2, then The Hangover, then The Hangover Part 3, then Due Date. I do love how funny it is because it's like 4 posters of just like wackiness with the guys.
We're on an adventure with this dog.
And Joker. It's a very stark difference.
Yeah, we were saying too, I recall in my head, Old School was like a huge hit, and I would have fully expected to see it up there.
Yeah.
But, oh well.
Yeah, he was building a name. Will Ferrell was building a name for himself.
Yeah, no, right.
So.
Like now, to look back, that was like sort of a smaller movie, but in my head, it's an epic undertaking.
Of course, we like to look at tickets sold, and not much changes when you look at both of these guys as far as how many tickets they have sold. But let's just, for the sake of letting you know, tickets sold. Joker, you notice that the dollar amounts were very far apart. The tickets sold amounts are actually very close together, within about 300,000 of each other for Joker and Signs, the 2 highest sellers of Joaquin's career. But Joker's still number 1, followed by The Village and Gladiator, which stay where they are. But number 5, instead of Walk the Line, actually 2004's Ladder 49 with John Travolta.
Yeah.
Number 5 by tickets sold for Joaquin Phoenix.
Wow,
So,
I forgot that movie existed.
Most people did. When I saw it today, I'm like, oh
right.
Yeah, Ladder 49. So, and if you look at Todd Phillips, it's pretty much the same. Down to the fact that, it's even closer. Hangover Part 2 sold, estimated almost exactly as many tickets as the Joker did in its opening weekend, followed by The Hangover and The Hangover 3. But Starsky and Hutch takes the place of Due Date, which was Todd Phillips's number 5 movie just by raw dollars back in, what was that, 2004?
Yeah, 2004. It was 2004, I know, because we were looking it up for a different reason earlier today.
Oh, well, we looked up Starsky and Hutch for 2 separate reasons today? No, we were looking up
2004 movies. Remember, Spencer was looking for something from 2004 to watch.
That's right.
Starsky and Hutch, not going to be his selection, I think.
No, I don't know if he's going to choose Starsky and Hutch.
Say not. It's interesting to look at the Todd Phillips one. You can see the reactions to these Hangover movies in their placement. Hangover 1, huge hit, beloved, popular movie. Everybody rushed out the first weekend to go see Part 2. Did even better than the first one. Part 2, so terrible, such a disaster. Everybody was like, forget this whole franchise, and then you get a huge drop-off for Part 3.
That is a big drop-off for 3, especially when they market it as the end. A lot of times you can keep that goodwill on keep it alive on life support.
But they let people know it was the final chapter.
They did. It still did okay, but certainly not to the degree that
it did good, because people still liked that first movie and had positive associations, but you could really see the impact 2 had on the viability of that franchise.
So, Lon, we looked at a couple of charts last week when we were talking about the Joker's history at the box office and where this one would rank. Let's see what those adjustments were. First of all, top 5 openings just as far as raw money. Joker comes in right there at number 3, behind Suicide Squad and The Dark Knight, way ahead of Lego Movie and 1989's Batman, which we're going to talk about when we look at the number of tickets sold here. But again, a lot of people might say like, wow, look at that gap between 2 and 3. But again, remember, that is a huge summer release. It's PG-13. It's not just Joker. You're selling a whole lot of other stuff, and it costs, definitely more than Joker did to produce. It is a much larger in scale movie than Joker itself.
That one, just the task facing your marketing department is sell people on this popular comic book series featuring a number of characters that they know that isn't messing with the formula. They're doing an adaptation of the comic book, whereas this one, it's a much bigger sell. It's a much larger task out of them. Like, you've got it's this character, but in a totally new context.
Yeah, and with a restrictive rating that does not, a PG-13 movie, it's a guidance rating, but anybody can go to a PG-13. Right. You can buy a ticket for a PG-13 movie at any age as long as you got money and can walk up to the window. Joker, a restricted rating. If somebody sneaks in, you're not going to get that money. Right. Anyway, so I think, again, it's not just the numbers game. You have to also take into account the different factors. And
the Joker probably cost 1/3 what Suicide Squad cost.
Yeah, it was, like I said, $55 million. It's already, it's probably had a huge marketing spend, but it's going to make make its money back easily.
Not a single helicopter explodes the entire movie.
No helicopters were harmed in the filming of Joker. The other one, tickets sold. This is where things get a lot closer actually between Batman and Joker. Suicide Squad and Dark Knight again, a pretty large lead with Lego Batman far behind. So Lon, we talked about this last week. We were talking about Batman '89 was such a cultural phenomenon. The marketing blitz was everywhere, and a lot of people were surprised to see that by tickets sold, it was right up there close to Joker. The fact that it was like such a massive movie. When you adjust, a lot of people would expect Batman to be much higher. There's a couple of factors that you need to take in. In fact, number one, Batman was 30 years ago. The exhibition model was still, even though the marketing onslaught was ramped up, the exhibition model was still changing. Batman in 1989 opened in 2,194 theaters, compared to Joker, which opened in 4,374. Batman also opened against Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which was formidable competition. Same Disney, same week.
Well, I saw both
head to head. I did too, but still. But you had real competition there, and then also, and this is something to remember. I corrected myself earlier, I think this year, because I didn't even have this right. When I talk about a movie being in a theater, that's not the number of screens. That's just the number of buildings that it's in. So even though Batman was in 2,194 theaters,
most of them were small theaters.
A lot of them were small theaters.
1 screen, 2 screens, 3 screens. The whole, for you kids out there, in 1989, the multiplex concept was very new. I don't know if I'd ever been to one.
Well, and even if you have a multiplex, the idea of a 16 or 24 or 30 screen was unheard of. So even if you have an 8 or 12 screen multiplex,
it would have been like 6 to 8 would have been like the most screens in any theater.
Right. Whereas Joker, in so many theaters, was on 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 screens, depending on the how many theaters you had or how many screens you had.
They would do that stagger, like it's every 30 minutes and a new one starts every hour. That didn't used to exist at all. You would go to the theater if it's sold out. Oh, well, let's go see whatever's playing at the next closest theater. So
I think that, again, when you look at these numbers, it's not just looking at the numbers. It's historical context. It's how the model has changed. It's how exhibition has changed. It's how buildings themselves have changed.
And also the ticket sale. I mean, we're talking about the butts in seats versus you could buy a movie ticket for $6.
Right.
So they're just bringing in a lot less, just actual money.
If you want to, if you are Joker and you want to keep pace with Batman, adjusted for inflation to keep pace, the Joker would have to gross over $500 million, because that's also how Batman worked. Is maybe it opened smaller than Joker, but it played for months. In theaters throughout the summer and beyond. So
plus Joker doesn't have his own cereal.
That's true. Does he? Does he not? Is there a Joker cereal?
I'm not released.
Not this Joker.
Not done with this movie.
I'm sure there was perhaps at sometimes a Joker cereal.
Maybe. I don't know if I've ever seen a Joker cereal.
All the comments are going to be
It's going to be like, you idiots!
It's like when we speculated about a Mummy animated series.
You're right.
You're right. I'm sure there was probably a Joker cereal.
It's all marshmallows.
Yes.
It's twisted.
It is twisted. It'll get you jacked up on sugar, too. One last chart, and then we're done with Joker for this week. R-rated openings, top 5. We just added It Chapter 2 to this, and we just got kicked off the screens by another WB movie. Joker comes in at number 4 behind the first It film. Ahead of The Matrix Reloaded, kicking It Chapter 2 to 6th place. It did not make the top 5 as far as tickets sold. That's where Passion of the Christ still holds an edge. That was a phenomenally successful, particularly opening weekend. So that's our Joker charts. We will be covering this movie so much more as we go on, as we track the progress. The one thing that I'm actually interested in looking at as we go into next week, we've talked about how it's very unconventional for a film in the comic book genre. It's very much more of a drama. I would say a horror, psychologically.
Definitely has some horror
very deep
elements.
Psychology to it. Yeah. I'm interested to see as we go next week and we look at the drop, does it drop a little bit more like we might expect from a big event comic book movie, which is a little more how it opened? Or does it hold like an adult-oriented drama, like we would see with A Star Is Born, where we see a smaller drop from week to week because you have an audience that's maybe not as engaged and going in the first weekend? That's what's going to be interesting, because I think we're in a little bit of unprecedented territory. The only movie analogous recently would be a Logan, as far as like a mainstream comic book character, not a graphic novel adaptation, not something like Watchmen, but...
I mean, I think the same kind of stuff we were saying at the top, that I think part of what and there's no way to prove this. It's just a theory, anecdotally. But I think part of what led Joker to be so massively successful this weekend was that it's being discussed a lot. People are talking about it, and I think that's going to continue to help it for the next at least week or two. That conversation is ongoing. People are still tweeting about it. Still very much discussed on social media. I think a lot of adults are going to want to have a take. They're going to want to have an opinion about this Joker thing. So I think we could probably see at least another week or two of pretty big, tickets sales. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Pretty big weekends at the box office for Joker.
It's got some competition though. Gemini Man coming out. We got Addams Family coming out. It does not have an easy weekend to just sit around and we'll see what happens.
I don't know about this Gemini Man.
Well, you'll find out tomorrow right here on Fandom Entertainment because I get to see it tonight. Luckily, I'm very lucky. I'm a lucky dude.
Yes.
Let's go. Let's take a look at the rest of the top 5 before we move on to some other more fun business. Abominable drops to number 2. A 42% drop in week 2. Downton Abbey drops to 3rd. Hustlers drops to 4th. Downton is getting close to $75 million. Hustlers is close to $100 million. It Chapter 2 crossed the $200 million mark, and just outside the top 5 was Judy, which is getting some awards buzz for Renee Zellweger. That expanded to 1,000 theaters, made just under $5 million. Now, Lon, a movie that was not in the top 5 was Ad Astra, starring Brad Pitt. Now, if you watched the show, you know that last week we started the Ocean's 11 space race. Well, as always, you provided, and I mean this, some great feedback and some adjustments that we have made. Now, it is going to remain the top 11 space race because this is gonna keep going.
Oh, sure.
For example, Don Cheadle.
These are some big A-listers.
Don Cheadle's going to be in Space Jam 2.
That's right.
So this it's not going to be every week, but when it's relevant, this graphic is going to keep going. We're going to keep track of this, but it's the top now. The Ocean's 11 top 11 space race. One big change, we talked about this in the show last week, because it is canonically connected to the other Ocean's films.
Right.
The crew from Ocean's 8 now included in the list.
Yeah, Debbie Ocean.
So Debbie, I mean, they're part of the crew. They're part of the same universe. So I could come up with no reasonable reason to exclude that group. They're a heist crew. It's the same universe. So now they're part of that list. Many people last week, and you're right, I forgot about the part. I was thinking Infinity War, Rhodey. I forgot about the part that Don Cheadle did go to space in Avengers Endgame.
We got a little schism
as
here.
War Machine.
I don't love this. I feel like Marvel space is different from science fiction astronaut space. I kind of liked limiting it to characters who've realistically gone to space as opposed to flying around the Marvel universe. But we agree that if you're going to include Cheadle as Rhodey, you've got to include Cate Blanchett.
Well, that became the slippery slope. Now, do you include Cate Blanchett as Hela?
I think you have to.
My criterion was, did this character physically somehow enter the dimension of Earth's outer space?
Right.
And it was determined that by taking the Bifrost from Earth to Asgard, we decided that Hela did indeed travel through space. So Don Cheadle now added is the new number 1.
Yeah.
Cate Blanchett now the new number 2. Now the other changes: Gravity, Sandra Bullock now part of that. The Ocean siblings were both in Gravity. The Martian there at number 4. Interstellar, I added Anne Hathaway. I took away Casey Affleck for 2 reasons. Number 1, he made the line of text too long. Number 2, he didn't leave Earth.
Yeah, he's Earthbound.
So he's down. Elysium there at number 6. That's the number 6 film. Now Capricorn 1, which was on the list with Elliot Gould, rightfully so again. He did not go to space.
It's about
space.
It's about they fake a space landing.
Right. So I've taken Elliot Gould off the list. He's off the list. So if we go back to it, let's look at the last 5. Passengers with Andy Garcia. A lot of people's like, oh, he wasn't in that much in the movie. Still counts. He's in space. Mission to Mars with Don Cheadle. Brad Pitt there number 9. He stays at number 9. I don't think he's going to catch Mission to Mars.
No.
But he does have it over Titan AE and Matt Damon, and then Rihanna, who was in the Ocean's 8 crew, there at number 11 with Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets.
She's bubble.
Ad Astra not going to be last, but also not going to be up in the upper echelon of the Ocean's 11.
When you're only beating Titan AE and Valerian, it's not where you want to be.
Yeah, I mean that is a huge gap to breach with Mission to Mars. It's not going to. They're not going to catch. They're not going to catch Mission to Mars. So I was doing some research. I believe Space Jam 2 will be the next shot. I mean, Don Cheadle's already number 1.
We know Cheadle's in Space Jam 2.
Right.
We can't confirm yet that he definitely goes to space.
If Don Cheadle is in Space Jam 2 and does not go to space, not eligible.
Right, exactly. He has to go.
He has to go. He has to be in outer space. Will that happen? We'll find out.
Yeah, I don't know.
But as Ad Astra gets final, we will continue to update the Ocean's 11 space race. And then for the foreseeable future, because the show is dumb and I like doing stupid things, we're going to be talking about a cat in a minute.
Very serious.
So, yeah, it's a very serious show. Let's look at the top film per theater. Now, Lon, a lot of times when a movie opens huge, almost always that movie is the top per theater winner. But that's not the case this weekend. It's actually Pain and Glory, which is the latest film from Pedro Almodovar. Now, we actually talked about it, Lon. Pain and Glory is what we think Joker would have been called if they hadn't attached it to the DC.
Yeah,
and it would have been right here. It would have been a 4-theater.
Pain and Glory, the love theme from Joker.
The love theme from Joker. Pedro Almodovar, it was nominated for the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, did not win, but it did win Best Actor for Antonio Banderas. It was also announced that this film will be Spain's submission for the newly renamed Best International Film Oscar. Now, Almodovar won that prize for All About My Mother. Yeah. He was nominated for Best Director and won Best Original Screenplay for Talk to Her in 2002. But strangely, Spain did not pick Talk to Her as their Best Foreign Film submission that year. That's why Talk to Her was not nominated for Best Foreign Language Film. They picked a movie called Mondays in the Sun, which was not nominated. So,
how do you not choose your?
I mean, that would have been a slam dunk winner.
It seems like he's their most internationally respected filmmaker.
Well, I think it's probably a good shot that you're going to see this film nominated for Best International Film. Yeah. And a lot of times, as we saw with Penelope Cruz and Volver, we'll see if Antonio Banderas gets any traction they can break into. As I mentioned, Almodovar won a original screenplay Oscar for one of his films.
And he and Banderas, it's like they've collaborated many times. It's a celebrated collaboration, so I'd never count them out in award season.
No, definitely not. Let's keep that world cinema vibe going because there's actually a big weekend in China, as big as it was here with Joker. There was a big National Day in China, which fell on October 1st, celebrating the 70th anniversary of the establishment of the People's Republic in China, which led to some huge box office returns. Joker, as we mentioned last week, hit just about all of its international markets this past weekend, so it was number 1 with $236 million. As I mentioned, it's a $55 million budget, so this is going to be a big windfall for Warner Brothers. However, there's another film called My People, My Country that took second place with over $100 million gross over the weekend. This is an anthology film from several prominent Chinese directors, featured a lot of famous Chinese actors. It was produced in conjunction and to celebrate as I mentioned, the 70th anniversary of the establishment of the People's Republic of China, which that day was celebrated last week. And there were a lot of, basically almost everything else on this chart is also from that celebration and films that are produced. The second one is The Captain. Lon, if you'll remember, we talked about a film earlier this year called The Bravest, which was about a group of Chinese firefighters. This is another film in that series. It was based on a true story. These are based on true stories. This is about a captain of a commercial airliner who helped to successfully pilot it to the ground after it lost cabin pressure.
Chinese Sully.
Yeah, the Chinese Sully. Yeah, very similar sort of story.
There you go.
So that was number 3. As you saw, another big gross. Abominable, which we mentioned last week, came out there but was facing stiff competition, still number 4 on the worldwide chart. And then if you look at number 5, that's another Chinese film called The Climbers, another true life story about 2 separate groups of climbers that attempted to climb Mount Everest. So a big weekend in the Chinese market as they celebrated National Day.
I want a Sully the Captain crossover movie. They're like piloting like a Chinese jet and an American jet, like about to crash.
They're both real people. Maybe they could just meet in person.
Well, not as interesting. I want Tom Hanks and the other guy.
You want the Hollywood version.
I want the Hollywood version. I don't care about real Sully.
Fair. You don't care about real. You don't care about the actual hero.
I wish him well, but I don't want to see a movie with him.
That Sully movie, and I know a lot of people like it, and he is a hero. That was the most low stakes movie of all time. Like, this is how I described the Sully movie. It was the daring story of one man's perilous journey from being a hero to still being a hero.
There's a whole scene in the movie movie where he goes and picks out a pre-made sandwich, and they show you the whole thing because there's just not that much of the movie. They're like, do I want the sun-dried tomato and pesto? And it's like that's about what you get with Sully.
Was it that one, or was that the Paris movie that had the? Because I remember 1517 to Paris also had an entire like. We're going into a deli to buy things.
I never saw that one, but I guess Clint Eastwood just has a deli thing.
He loves filming two things. One, real life heroes buying food.
Yeah.
Two, himself having threesomes.
That's right. Yes.
Which, in case you don't remember, happens in The Mule.
It does. Which is a sixsome.
That is a weird movie. Okay, let's go to the top 2019 domestic list. No change from last week. Avengers, Lion King, Toy Story, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man, Aladdin, It, Us, Hobbs and Shaw, and John Wick Chapter 3. Joker obviously has got John Wick in its sights as it attempts to... it'd be pretty surprising, actually, if it did not.
Seems like another week or two.
Another couple weeks, it'll probably be on that chart, supplanting John Wick Chapter 3. Looking at the 2019 worldwide chart, again, no changes. We've got Avengers Endgame. That's, I'd be shocked if that's the highest grossing movie of all time. That's going to be #1 for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Lion King, Spider-Man, Captain Marvel, Toy Story 4, Aladdin, Hobbs and Shaw, Ne Zha, which, as we mentioned, is a Chinese film, The Wandering Earth, a Chinese film, and then How to Train Your Dragon 3. Again, some of those are going to go away, but for now, pretty stable on the list as things kind of move around.
Yeah, we got a Frozen film, we got a Star Wars film.
We got Jumanji, we got a lot to go.
Some opportunities still.
So, Lon, we're at that time of the show,
we got a Cats
and we've got some Cats drama today to talk about. So first of all, let's get to the Meowdown.
Cats drama.
So much. As we look at, we're 75 days away, Lon, from the release of Cats.
I can almost taste it.
Oh, I can. I'm allergic to cats, and I can feel the sneeze forming in my nose as Cats gets even closer. I take Claritin because we have two wonderful cats at home. But Lon, we are every week. If you watch the show, we are meeting a new cat every week because I want to arm both myself and you at home with the knowledge that you're going to need. Now, we're not spoiling the movie, but I just want you to know who these cats are as you're walking in.
I don't think you can spoil the movie.
Apparently you can. I don't know.
They just show up and introduce themselves.
Well, then I guess I am spoiling the movie. So, spoiler alert, I guess. Before we meet this week's cat, let's recap who we've met already.
Helpful.
Of course, the first cat that we met, BUSTOPHER Jones, to be played by James Corden. Then we met the wonderful old Deuteronomy, to be played by Dame Judi Dench. Next up, we've got MACAVITY, the mystery cat with a fedora, played by Idris Elba. I'm so interested to see that. Then JENNYANYDOTS, to be played by Rebel Wilson. A little happy-looking cat there, right? And then we've got GRIZABELLA, horrifically portrayed by Jennifer Hudson in that photograph.
It's terrifying.
And then Gus the theater cat, who we talked about last week, to be played by Ian McKellen. Sir Ian McKellen, my apologies.
Because apparently cats have their own cat theaters where they put on cat plays.
Cat theaters and cat prostitution, we figured out, are two things that exist in the world of the Jellicle cats.
There's a whole cat economy.
This week we're meeting a real star. We're meeting a cat, Rum Tum Tugger. Now, if the Jellicle Cats had a Mick Jagger, it would be Rum Tum Tugger.
Oh, okay.
Traditionally portrayed as the charismatic rock star of the group. I'm going to read to you now from the casting call for the character. This is how it was described. The rock star should have a strong, raw rock voice to be able to move well and must have a wild sex appeal with a sense of humor, playing age 25 to 30. Rum Tum Tugger is an attention hog. He's a hero to the younger generation. He's a nuisance to the older generation. Now, this is where I got into some real Cats drama that I didn't even know. This led me down a real rabbit hole.
Yeah, wow.
So in 2014, they did a revival of Cats in London. And as I mentioned, Rum Tum Tugger, kind of a rock star. They reimagined his character to be what they call more of an urban vibe. So his introductory song, which is like a rock, jam, was like more of like a rap song. They gave him a backwards baseball cap, braided hair, a vest top, and harem pants.
Okay. I don't know what cats are wearing baseball caps.
Right. Well, that's the thing. They're not wearing clothes. Are they?
I don't know.
They don't appear to me to be wearing clothes.
No, JENNYANYDOTS in that picture is not wearing any clothes.
So, but MACAVITY's wearing a fedora. This is what's so confusing to me.
Okay,
why are some of the cats naked and some of the cats are not naked?
It looks like your stage cats will wear like a coat and a hat, and your movie, look, he's in a coat.
But is that fur or is that a coat? I don't even know.
I think MACAVITY's in a coat and a hat.
Right. But then is Jenny Any Dots then naked?
But this is confusing because stage Bustopher Jones is in a suit, but then James Corden is nude.
So already this confused me. So then this is what I found out about the same 2014 London revival of Cats. We talk about The Masked Singer on SJU every week. Nicole Scherzinger, I guess they saw that she was in the Pussycat Dolls and were like, she should be in Cats.
That has the word cat in it.
She played Grizabella in this same revival, but then when it was time to go to Broadway, she actually really pissed off Andrew Lloyd Webber because she left the show to go back to X Factor to be a judge on X Factor. But there was a rumor that the real reason why was that they wouldn't give her top billing above the word cats.
She wanted to be like
Broadway.
Nicole Scherzinger in Cats.
Which apparently they did in London, and then the New Yorkers were like, get out of here. And they said no.
Cats goes at the top of the poster. That was more Boston.
Leona Lewis replaced her and did the Broadway run. Did not get good reviews. Nicole Scherzinger, apparently, good reviews as Grizabella. Leona Lewis did not get good reviews. Was that fair? I don't know. I've never even seen the original show.
You have to have seen both productions.
Every time I dig into this, there's always some drama about Judi Dench spraining her ankle.
Yeah, people.
Or it's crazy.
In and out, constantly
it's
shifting.
insane. So yes, this not this role, but Grizabella, played by Jennifer Hudson, also played by Nicole Scherzinger in the revival of Cats. Jason Derulo is going to play Rum Tum Tugger. Jason Derulo is the one who was in the picture. He will be. That's Jennifer Hudson and Grizabella. Jason Derulo,
he has to show up and sing his own name at the beginning of all of his songs. Rum Tum Tugger.
Why not, right? So there you go. That's Rum Tum Tugger. That's your cat for this week, Lon. Who will it be next week, and what drama in the Cats community? There's so many cats. We're gonna do one at a time, and then at the end, I'm gonna be like, and here's 47 more. It's crazy. I think they add to the IMDb every week because I go back and I'm like, wait, that cat wasn't there last week. It's insane. I mean, interesting. And we're gonna
the entire show is introducing cats, so I guess there has to be a lot of them.
Well, we're going to keep doing it. Lon, as I mentioned, Joker is in week 2 this week, but we have 3 films hitting wide release. We've got the animated Addams Family, new Addams Family movie.
Huge appeal. We've got kids who've never heard of the Addams Family to adults who don't like this version of Addams Family.
Exactly. We've got Jexy, who it's kind of like Her. It's Adam Devine, and he has an app who becomes obsessed with him on his phone.
This is coming out in theaters?
It's coming out in 2,300 of them. Wow. Although I've heard that there will be no screening for critics, is what I've heard.
I haven't even heard of this.
Read into that. I saw a trailer for it. And also Ang Lee's Gemini Man, which is a big one of his big, not just technological on the screen, but 3D theatrical thing. That comes out on Friday as well. I am going to be able to see that tonight. We're going to do a review for that tomorrow.
Are you seeing it all with the crazy frame rate and everything?
It said in 3D, and it didn't say bring a vomit bag, so I'm assuming it's not going to be in 60 FPS, but you never know. Also, coming out in a theater near you, a movie that we mentioned several months ago that I'm excited to see. I think I'm going to get to see it fairly soon, and I want to start doing more foreign and indie movies here. I've been falling down a little bit. But the film that did win the Palme d'Or at Cannes, Parasite.
Oh, right. Bong Joon-ho.
From Bong Joon-ho goes into limited release this week, and hopefully will be rolling out otherwise. I've heard so many good things about this movie.
Yeah.
That might be another one when you're looking at the best foreign film race to keep an eye on.
Sure.
So a lot of stuff in wide release, a lot of holdovers, and Parasite and some others in limited release.
Week.
So I think you got a good week of options in front of you.
Plus another cat.
Plus, you can do more research on Rum Tum Tugger.
Yeah.
There's so much more to learn. If you just tug at that knot a little bit more, there's so much more to learn about Rum Tum Tugger. Lon, thank you for joining me.
Always a pleasure.
Anything you want to plug?
Just follow me on Twitter at LONS.
Follow him on Twitter at LONS. You can follow me on Twitter at Murrell Dan. And we'll be back here next week on Charting with Dan to talk about Joker Week 2 and everything else that came out. Thanks for watching.